Hello, this is Paul Chek. Welcome back to yet another one of my many video blogs. I hope you are enjoying them. It is a gift from my heart to all of you and anyone interested in what I can share, most of which comes from my own school of hard knocks, which I must admit is a daily process for me, even with all these years of study and practice. And I think having studied many of the masters and enlightened ones, that it continues even for those who are most enlightened among us. Today my topic is love as first principle, and that is a statement that means whenever we are relating to ourselves or to other people, whether we do or do not have a belief system, a religion, a philosophy, a creed, ultimately the way we relate to ourselves, others, in the world is an expression of our conscious or unconscious first principle. In other words, what is it that you ultimately believe is the source of your being? What is it that you ultimately believe love is, or is the source of love and the substance of love? And does your way of acting toward yourself, others, in the world reflect your stated first principle, or is there a gap between the story that you're telling yourself and the story you're telling other people? Some wise man once said, "Never judge a man by the creed he or she professes, but by the life he or she lives." I added the she element because it was very masculine. And that's very, very important, and it takes an act of honesty and courage to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, is the creed I'm professing in harmony with the life that I live? And I ask myself that every day, and admittedly I find areas where I could do better and seek to find ways that I could do better. Often, as I'm sure you will be aware, it's the challenging people in our lives. Oftentimes they're family members that are the most challenging for us. And so what I've found is that you can't fix anybody. You have to let them choose to do it on their own, and you can't tell somebody something that they're not ready to hear. It's like talking to a drug addict about getting clean. It doesn't work. And the best thing we can do is love ourselves and decide what is the best way or the safest way or the safest distance to love another person or another place or thing or love, period. So today what I'd like to do is take you through what I have identified in my many years of research within myself, coaching other people, and studying the teachings of the great masters and teachers throughout the world that I have studied, which is a lot of them. And in that, I've identified 4 examples or different means by which an individual expresses their first principle. And you will find that many will state that their first principle is what I will define as number 1, but may be actually acting out number 2, number 3, or number 4. And my intention is not to make one of them better than the other, but to show that they're all steps or stages of growth and development that ultimately lead to each other. So 4 leads to 3, 3 leads to 2, 2 leads ultimately to 1. So let's have a look now at love as first principle. First, I'd like to give you a definition of love that in my own meditative explorations was given to me through quiet introspection with that inner part of myself I call my soul. When asking my soul what love is, one of the definitions I was given is that love is consciousness becoming aware of itself. So when we're talking about our first principle, we're really talking about the manifestation of consciousness in and as life. And because we have a subject-object relationship, even with ourselves, love has to have somewhere to flow. So the subject-object relationship is important. When you say, I love you, or I love myself, there's a subject. I am loving something, the object. So if I say, I love you, then object being you, not object like stone, but the objective of my love, or the direction of my love, is there. If I say I love myself, then love is flowing from the subject, that which is not identifying itself as something, towards the body, or the perception of self, that which is identified as something differentiated from something else, i.e., I love myself means I'm loving that which you see here as me, but maybe not loving the person standing next to me. So we see that the subject-object relationship is absolutely essential for love to flow, and we all know from life experience that sometimes our intentions to love are not received well, and sometimes others' intentions to love us are not received well. And in that, shall we say, mode of resistance that is very common, consciousness becomes aware of itself, not necessarily in the good times as much as the bad times, because we are more awakened when things are challenging for us. If things are just going hunky-dory all the time, then we tend to settle in and become less conscious. But when we have to solve problems and work through relationship challenges with ourselves or others, or even the world, then we must become aware, or we cannot come to a resolution. So in a most beautiful paradox, love grows itself through the challenges that present itself in the experience of life and love every day. So let's take a brief look at these 4 principles. Like I say, none of which I'm here positioning as better than the other. You could say they're just a broader or a narrower awareness within the consciousness of that individual, but the highest form is receptive of and inclusive of and in worship of the 3 that I would call lower, only not in rank, but in awareness. First principle is unconditional love. So here, love is all there is. Any perceived limitations are the work of spirit. So love is all there is. Any perceived limitations are the work of spirit. A means of self, capital S-E-L-F means the world. A means of self-embodied worship, or self, little self, you, or self-reflection. A growing grace, praise, and acceptance of the all. So what I'm saying here is that in this principle, love is all there is, and that any perceived limitations are the work of spirit, as necessary to perceive a subject-object relationship so that love has somewhere to flow. Otherwise, if you were in a state of unconditional love, there would be no I, there would be no thou, there would be no I and the world, or I and the universe. So that's an important distinction to make. So let's read that again. Love is all there is. Any perceived limitations are the work of spirit, a means of self-embodied worship or self-reflection, a growing grace, praise, and acceptance of all. So if you take a minute and meditate on those words, I think they'll flower in you. Next, we have love as world or universe. Here we are addressing what we could call the agnostic or atheistic viewpoints. An agnostic is someone who, if you ask them, do you believe in God, or do you think there is a God, they will not say yes or no. They will say, I'm not sure, I don't feel confident in making that decision, which means typically an agnostic remains open to the possibility, but couldn't claim that they have a religious affiliation or a distinct set of criteria by which, or objective parameters by which God exists in their own life or in their own psyche. An atheist is someone who does not believe in God, but having worked with many atheists as patients and had quite a number of them as students, and studying a lot of literature on atheism and listening to Richard Dawkins go on and on and on, I've come to the conclusion that most atheists don't really have a problem with God in the true sense of what the word means, which is all. They have a problem with dogmas. They have a problem with gods that have bad manners, gods that like to kill children, gods that like to start wars, gods that are temperamental, gods that impose limitations or control on people through various forms of commandments or thou shalts, and the kind of God that one is supposed to be fearful of in the negative sense of the word, not in the sense of worship, which is really the God of orthodoxy and dogma. So in all fairness to atheists, I can have empathy for that viewpoint, considering the amount of destruction, genocide, and warfare that emanates from that mythical God, which is what it really is. So in this case, when your first principle is love is the world or the universe, the world or universe is all we have and all we know, for science tells us so. So if that's the case, then love nurtures and does not defile. If that is your principle, that love is the world or love is the universe, then that principle as awareness of love as the world or the universe would also be loving toward the world and or the universe, and that would include what we would call earth, the soil, the foundation of our very being, the source of our body, the source of our food, the source of our homes, the source of our place. You know, the Aboriginals say, when you ask an Aboriginal wise man, what is God? The Aboriginal wise man might say eternity physicalized as place. So if one can't comprehend eternity, then one can comprehend place, because here we are. So if a person is at this level of loving and their creed matches their actions, there will be love and respect for the earth. There will be love and respect for the water, love and respect for fire, which is the warmth between us, which is the metabolism within you. Therefore, respect for the needs of your own body and caring for your own body, because the way you live and the way you eat is either to stoke the fire with kindling wood till it burns the house down, which would be immediate gratification, quick this, quick that, sugary this, coffee that, overstimulate, or to ignore the fire and become, shall we say, progressively cold, depressive, apathetic, or hypothyroid would be a physical expression of that. We must also love the air, for we need to breathe, and without breath we are in dire trouble, for breathing is the one essential function that we all have to have. But if we look at how many people that worship science and claim agnostic or atheistic religion are unconsciously defiling the earth, the water, the warmth factor, the air factor, and then space, the space we live in, then there's an example of having a stated creed but not exemplified in actual practice or worship. And I think all of us could agree that we're at a tipping point in the evolution of man, where if we don't begin to worship the earth, the water, the fire for what it is, be it the fire of the sun, the fire of the warmth within us, and the fire of our own metabolism, which gives us our ability to live and share as a human being, and if we don't worship the air and we don't respect the space between each other, then we are headed for, shall we say, well, we're going to have a new relationship with the fire, and the fire will be a transformative agent that may change the world and the way we live in such a way that none of us will ever be able to forget it. Then we have first principle number 3, which is love as we. This is ethnocentric. It relates to my people. Someone at this level has a tremendous amount of love for their family or the people in their own social group or their own church or their own tribe, but there's often a lot of disdain, criticism, resent, or reject of other groups and other peoples of different opinions. So here, love nurtures its own, but grows to appreciate other groups as essential for its own survival. So first we start off in this kind of my religion versus yours, my gang versus yours, my family versus yours, mine, not yours, drawing lines in the sand and territorialization. But somebody in this level of worship eventually wakes up to realize certain things. For example, they might have a real disdain towards the Oriental people or the Chinese, and all of a sudden notice that half of everything they own is made in China, and go, oh my God, if it wasn't for the Chinese people, I wouldn't have this, I wouldn't have that. Or it might be made by somebody else, but they're unconscious of it, and oftentimes we come to realize step by step that many of the people that we hold outside of our social group or sphere of love are actually essential for our survival. And even if we don't think they're essential for our survival, they may be essential for us to learn to get along with, because the disdain or the tension between us may be causing things like terrorist attacks and destruction of nature as we project that pain out into the environment around us. So when we're at the Love as We group, we grow to finally realize that everybody that is outside of our group actually is essential for our own survival, and therefore as we grow, the borders of our own sphere of we expands progressively until it engulfs the world. And then we jump up one model of first principle, which shows that consciousness is becoming aware of itself. Finally, we have love as I. I is ego or self-centric. It loves and nurtures itself, but grows to appreciate we as essential for its own experience of love and its own survival. So to love yourself is very, very important, because you're all you've got for sure. This is the one space you can say is yours. To love yourself means to love the earth that supports you, to be conscious of the water that you put into your body and conscious of what's happening to water all over the world, because the water all over the world ultimately becomes the water that you're going to need to drink as you travel the world. It means to respect the warmth inside of you and respect the nature of life itself, the seasons, the cycles, the food, the way you manage your own inner fire. Anger is to inflame that fire. To not care is to ignore the fire and put a dark shade over the lamp of the soul. So as a person at this level of worship grows to realize that they couldn't be here without the love of a mother, we, the love of a father, we, the love of friends, we, and that just keeps going on, ... So as this little sapling begins to grow, it comes face to face with the realization that it is, shall we say, a branch on the tree of life itself, and realizes that it needs the we as much as it needs itself, because without the we, the I cannot exist. So here we grow to we. Here we grow to world and universe, and here we grow to understanding, appreciating, worshiping, and seeking to become more of the ultimate source of love, which is unconditional love. There is no timeline. All I can say that there is for sure is a progressive increase in the pain, the confusion, the sadness, and the disdain that goes with unconsciousness if we don't engage in awareness of each of these levels of first principle, because ultimately our first principle is mirrored in our actions, not in our statements. This is the practice that I work with every day, and it is really a practice, and it is really something that requires conscious awareness and commitment to. But ultimately, at the end of the day, all you can take with you when you die is what you've become. If you look at the physics of a black hole, according to Stephen Hawking, the only thing that can escape a black hole, if we use that as a model for death, is energy and information. And therefore, I will conclude by sharing that my other definition of love is the flow of energy and information through empathic and compassionate connection to self and or others. Love is the flow of energy and information in compassionate and empathetic connection to self and or others. And that escapes a black hole, that escapes death. That is what the soul is in harmony with, not how much money you have, not how fancy a car you drive or where you live, or how pretty your tits are, how big your dick is, or how big your bench press is, or how many gold medals you have. The one thing that goes with you is ultimately that essence of what we have become in relationship to self and other, because that's the only thing that truly gives meaning. And without meaning, life is flat. It is without juice. It is like food with no flavor. And that is one of the reasons we have so much anxiety, depression, and suicide. And consider that we have more suicide today amongst children and teenagers than ever in the history of man. And you can see that living out of tune with the harmony of love leads even children at an early age into the equivalent of a midlife crisis, for which they often don't have the support systems to get through and choose to seek to exist fully, i.e. live marginally, or cease to exist at all. These are the indicators that it's time for us to be honest about what our first principle is, and I don't think any one of them is more important than the other. All I think from a life of experience, and being now almost 55 years old and observing all this, that the only thing that really matters is that we honestly engage wherever we're at. If we can engage with ourselves honestly and nurture and love ourselves, we learn to do that for others. If we engage in our group and honestly learn to love and nurture that group, we learn to do that for the world. And when we do it for the world, we can't help but think what's behind it all. And that's when we have more interest in deep introspection, self-reflection, and taking each of the gems of those introspective self-reflections out into the world as the representation of the authentic level of harmony that we have in our soul with what love really is. That, to me, is the only legitimate spiritual practice there is. If you want some more supportive information, the last 4 doctors you'll ever need, How to Get Healthy Now, will give you all the tools you need to really bring yourself into harmony. The 1, 2, 3, 4 for overcoming addiction, obesity, and disease is a 9-hour audio program, but a 134-page workbook to help you process yourself using some of the techniques I do with my clients. But it gives you a very comprehensive explanation, far beyond what I've touched on here, as to what love really is and how unconditional love unfolds itself in stages to create the cycle of love itself. Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1, which is now available online, or you can come to the live workshop, takes you into how to really learn to use the principles of How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, zone exercises, and other things that are in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. But you get to learn from a true master that eats, sleeps, breathes, and exemplifies the principles and can answer your questions and guide you effectively. Last, my Chek 4 Quadrant Mastery Coaching Program. The next workshop is in San Diego, September 15th through the 18th, this coming September 2016. You can learn more about that at www.chekinstitute.com. Now, I want to give you fair warning, that is not a workshop for seminar goers looking for another certificate to stick on the wall. That is one of the most comprehensive training programs I've ever developed in my career. And if you're not ready to take an honest and deep look inside yourself, question your own values and your own religious beliefs and dogmas, it'll be a very scary and dangerous class for you. And I don't recommend you show up unless you're really ready to truly open Pandora's box and hold it in the arms of love and investigate yourself and see how you can grow and be a source of love and light for the world. Thanks for joining me today. I hope I get to see you along the way. I'd love to see you at that 4-Quadrant Mastery Workshop if you're ready to really get down into the nitty-gritty of it with me, and I'll share with you the depth of the process that I've been using for myself and share with my personal clients. Thanks for joining me. Lots of fun. Stay with your first principle. I'm Paul Chek.